And welcome to the Worldview. I'm your host, Chris Greco. For the next 30 minutes, we will be covering countries that you may have heard in the news, you may not know as well as you think you know. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to try to cover that country from the standpoint of geography, culture, and basically what's going on right now within that country, or at least within the last few months, to come, that type of thing. And the country we're going to cover today is Peru. And the reason we're going to cover Peru is because they are in basically about as close to chaos as you can get. And the reasons are elections. You know, as much as we talk about elections in this country, and as much as we talk about all the other things that go along with that, this is a country that basically is in absolute turmoil because of the ex-president and the current president. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's turn to the world as it is. And this is the world according to Google Earth. And basically, I wanted to present this first before I go into any other type of map, because I think it's important to understand where we are. And right now, we're here within the United States and in North Carolina, to tell the truth. So we're right about here. So we're right broadcasting from this area, right in this area here. And this is what we're going to talk about today, is all the way down south in South America at a place called Peru. Now, we take a look at Peru from the standpoint, if you've heard of Peru at all, it's from the standpoint of the Machu Picchu area. Machu Picchu is an archaeological dig. It's thousands of years old. It's an area of extremely important historical value, and that's where people go, and that's why a lot of people go to Peru. So that's basically what Peru is. But understand where Peru is in relationship to other areas. Like, for instance, Peru has a coastline here that goes along this area. Well, what is that coastline to? Ladies and gentlemen, it's to the Pacific Ocean. This is the Pacific Ocean in here. So it's not like, we're talking about, normally what we talk about is Atlantic Ocean, Mediterranean Sea, Europe, Africa, all these areas. What we're talking about now is the Pacific coast area of South America. All this area is South America. And interestingly enough, but if you continue down here in South America and you continue down and take a look at this area, you actually get into Antarctica. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the different areas of that. The thing I love about this about the map is the fact that you can move it, which is really nice. I mean, you can move this map around different areas. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Peru, and we're going to talk about going on with Peru. And just to let you know, so this is set. I have this set on some different distances. Now, I just want to go over some distances with you to have you understand exactly what exactly is going on from that. So first of all, let's take a look at Ecuador. Now, we have already talked about Ecuador in the past. That's the country that borders, one of the countries that borders Peru. So Ecuador, Quito, however you pronounce it, is the capital of Ecuador. And Lima is the capital of Peru. So here's Lima right on the coast here, and you can take and you can see what the distance is between Lima and Quito, and that distance is about 818 miles. So you may take a look at something like that and say, well, so what, Chris? What's 818 miles? Well, let's take a look at 818 miles for a second, and let's take a look at let's go to North Carolina, and we should be able to hit, let's say, Durham, which is nearby here. What's the distance between, let's say, Durham and Nashville? And that's half the distance. So 447 miles. So that's about a little more than half the distance from Durham to Nashville, where we're talking about Quito to Lima, Peru. So this is what we're talking about whenever we talk about distances. A lot of people do not understand that the distances involved. There's a lot of distance involved in these areas, and a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the migrants that come to Peru come from Venezuela. They have to come either through Colombia, or they have to come through Brazil. one of those two areas. Either that or go all the way around, try to go through Panama all the way around to Lima in that area. So what are we talking about? Well, let's take a look at just Caracas, which is the capital, and let's go all the way down to Peru. Let's say just even this in the center of Peru, and we're talking about over 1,000 miles. That's 1,000 miles travel time just to get to the middle of Peru. So that's, I mean, 1,000 miles, folks. 1,000 miles. When you talk about that, and you talk about the distances involved, let's talk about coast to coast. So we talk about the coast here. Um, so we're talking about almost all the way to Oklahoma, almost all the way past Oklahoma, from the coast of North Carolina, if we're talking about distances. So that's why this is really important to understand the distances involved and the distances when we're talking about just plain old walking or trying to get from one point to another point. And that's when we talk about these areas and we talk about Peru. So without further ado, what are we talking about? Let's talk about trouble in South America, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And this is a special Peruvian environs and what exactly is going on there and why is it important for us to understand what's going on in Peru. Well, first of all, let's talk about Peru. Now, the fact book, courtesy of the fact book, we have that. I've already explained that to you, CIA.gov. Please go to CIA.gov and go to the fact book. And I think that I know I say it every single time here, but I think it's very important to understand that it is so easy to be able to get that. And CIA fact book is there. It's there for you. It's CIA.gov. It's something you can take a look at. It's great. You go to CIA.gov and then just go to World Factbook. As a matter of fact, you could literally go to the World Factbook and take a look at the Peru aspect. And it's so much fun to do. And you want if you would like the reference for this specific one, you can find it here, and I'll go ahead and put it up for you. And this is where the Peru information is located. Okay, so why are we focusing on Peru? First of all, the government is in jeopardy. The current president is holding on literally by a thread. Bouillarte is the current president. She was the first vice president under President Castillo, who is the ex-president who was impeached and removed from office, and she was put in charge of the country. So Dina Ercilia Bouillarte Zagara replaced President Pedro Castillo in December of 2022, December 7th. Of all things, right? Interesting date. After he was removed from office, after he was impeached, he was supposed to be impeached. He was impeached. After he was impeached, I'm just going to let you read that for a second while I cough. Sorry, I'm still recovering from COVID. So basically what happened was he was removed from office, meaning he was impeached, right? Castillo dissolved the Congress, and then he attempted to rule by decree. He said, that he was going to bring democracy back to Peru. Well, he was literally physically removed from office. He was arrested, and by virtue of the Congress saying that he was alleged crimes of rebellion and conspiracy. And right now, there's a possibility of an extension of jail time by 18 months. I don't know whether they have actually decreed that or not, but basically they're putting him in jail. Now, what's happening? What's happening is his followers are rioting in the streets. They're very upset about the whole situation. There's some strikes going on. There's situations going on that are putting this country in absolute jeopardy. At the time he was arrested, Castillo was trying to seek asylum from the Mexican embassy. He was on his way to the Mexican embassy to try to seek asylum. And all this was Al Jazeera News. That is located at the bottom and you can certainly go to that site and take a look. I'm going to say something here on this show that I think Al Jazeera is one of the best media outlets. That I listen to them a lot on different international aspects, and they are so much better than any U.S. media source. I'm going to say that flat out, is that if I had the choice between Al Jazeera and any U.S. media source, any of them, I would pick Al Jazeera. I think that they cover it objectively. I think that they try to bring in as many facts as possible. They have good journalism. They have good reporting. I've always relied on them for good, solid aspects. Even when I was doing duty overseas, Al Jazeera was extremely good at reporting accurately those things that happen in an international context. This is my opinion, and my opinion only, but the U.S. needs to do better at that. They are not good at that, and I do not understand why they're not good at it, but they do not do good international reporting. And they really are focused on things within the United States that really are, in my mind, in my opinion, not as important as other things. And that's why people don't understand the difference between Peru and Venezuela, and they don't know how to point it out on a map, and they don't know that it's even in South America. So I mean, this is where the world. Everyone talks about this world view that we have to have. This world perspective, this world village, and all these other things have to go along with that. Well, this is part of the deal, folks. You got to understand what's going on. You have to understand why it's happening, and this is why it's happening. Is you have a president who basically was saying that they were going to take over by decree, and that was enough of that. People didn't want to hear any more of that. So these are the pictures of the ex-president Castillo, and he is on the left, and you can take a look at the reference at the bottom there to be able to take a look at that. And then Boluarte is on the right, Dina Boluarte, and she is the current president of Peru. She has not been elected as the president. So there's some issues with that. So let's take a look, as we do normally, at the World Factbook and the summary. This is a summary. This is really kind of nice, actually, because I've noticed this. The World Factbook has a bunch of different things in very, very detail, and then they have what they call a summary, which is really kind of nice, because the summary gives you, at a glance, everything that you basically need to know about the country. So this is the World Factbook at the top. That's what we talk about. Population about 32 million. Now, understand, that's about 10%, less than 10% of the U.S. population. The U.S. population is about 340 million people. There are 32 million. There's 6 ethnic groups, and there's 4 languages, with Spanish as the official language. 60% of the country is Roman Catholic. They produce sugarcane, potatoes, rice, plantains, milk, poultry, maize, cassava, oil, palm fruit, grapes as agricultural products. They export copper, gold, refined oil, zinc, fish meal, tropical fruits, lead, iron, molybdenum, and they do that to China. Interesting, to China, U.S., Canada, South Korea, and Switzerland. They import refined oil, crude oil, cars, broadcasting equipment. Now, understand, every single time I've presented this, I talk about broadcast equipment, and I try to, because I'm a data guy also, and I have a show called The Data Show, you constantly take that data in and you make it roll around in your head. And one of the things that I noticed is that whenever you're importing broadcast equipment, which means the government is importing that broadcast equipment for their use, that there is some indications, at least from other parts of the World Factbook and different research, that possibly means that those media outlets are government owned or government regulated. And the way to get to a population, I mean, Nazi Germany did it, Imperial Japan did it, is to take over those media outlets. Once you take over the media outlets, you can very, very definitely control the population. you control what the population hears, sees. All of a sudden, it's almost like a propaganda type aspect. They have delivery trucks, and they get them from China, U.S., and Brazil. So it's interesting how they get these areas. So that's that. And then let's take a look at the difference, the comparison here. I've already shown you some of the distance comparisons, but this is what we're talking about here. Is center of the United States, from eastern Texas to South Dakota, and then from Colorado over to near Kansas. So Missouri. So that's where you have those areas, right? You take a look at that and you say, geez, what exactly is that? It's not that big at all. So these are the things we talk about. Now, what's the current state of Peru? So this is I bring in the United States State Department and some other areas. Peruvian armed forces have been called out to quell riots in the streets. President Buyarte has called for elections in 2024, moving them up from the normal the normal election cycle. The economy is in flux because of general strikes everywhere. There's a lot of Castillo supporters, and what's happening is those Castillo supporters are now teaming up and saying they're not going to allow the country to be run without Castillo as president. So this is definitely an internal problem within Peru. People visiting Machu Picchu, which includes U.S. individuals, are stranded because of transportation issues within the country. So now all of a sudden, you have this situation happening. Now, I'll tell you, if you really want to understand a little bit about how these things can get out of control very, very quickly, you need to go back to September 1973, when Salvador Allende was taken by Augusto Pinochet in a coup in Chile. And that country was in absolute pandemonium because of that situation. Now, I'm not saying Peru is in that situation yet, but when you have degrading civil unrest in a country, there is the possibility that something could really go awry very quickly. COVID-19 is at the highest. In Peru is the highest in the world at this time per capita. So you have you have a relatively small population, but you have a very high rate of COVID-19 infection. The U.S. is providing disease control, is providing aid and assistance as much as possible to Peru, including the Department of Defense is giving money and personnel to help fund and organize regional operation centers, which they do in other countries too. It's not just Peru. Venezuelan migration is very high to Peru from Venezuela. And because of that, they're trying to transition people so that they can work and they can do all those things that need to be done and understand, Peruvian culture and laws and those types of aspects. So all this is being put on its head because of the situation between Castillo and Buyarte. So, and it's very important to enunciate and very important to refocus the fact that Buyarte ran with Castillo when Castillo was elected president. She was basically the first vice president. She took over as a matter of succession once Castillo was impeached and taken out of office. So I think from the different reporting, different research, that Buyarte is trying to do what needs to be done to be able to keep the country in a safe and stable situation. But unfortunately, because the Peruvian armed forces have been called out, that presents a whole other perspective, a whole other aspect of trying to put this country back on its feet. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the idea behind Peru and Peru as a country, and how this country, is trying like heck to be able to do what needs to get done. And it's really difficult, especially when we're talking about a country, to be able to understand what type of effect that is, unless you literally are in that country at that point in time. So let's review one more time just to make sure everyone understands. Today we're talking about Peru. Now understand that Peru's in South America. We've already talked about Brazil. We've talked about Venezuela. We talked about Colombia. We talked about Ecuador. Talked about other things that are going on. But I think it's important to understand also that you have a lot of instability all within this region. Think about this just for 1 second. You have Colombia, which is massively unstable at this point in time. A lot of drug aspects that are drug cartels that are basically having in this country. Ecuador is unstable at this point in time, again because of elections, because of other areas. They are also having issues, and they are having some instability with insurrection within its country. And now you have Peru. So I'll tell you, what you have is you have these areas where people are not going to be part of a very stable relationship within the country. Sorry about that. I had to cough again. So basically what happened is that people are going to start coming up through Central America, and that's a heck of a trek between all these areas, and then trying to come up through Mexico into the United States. So now you not only just have this instability down here in South America, but because of the instability coming up through, including in areas in Central America, you're going to end up having more and more migration into the United States. So, I mean, this is definitely a problem, folks. And this is something that the U.S. is trying to help out with and trying to get stabilized. But it's an internal political problem within Peru, and it will impact us in the United States sooner or later. And this is something that is really, really difficult from that standpoint. So let's talk about one more time the main characters. Ex-President Castillo, impeached and basically removed from office. His first vice president, Dina Boluarte, who's now the president, is trying to quell all these different areas and try to refocus the country on a more stable environment, and calling for elections to be moved up to 2024. Machu Picchu, small area, and it's located around. In fact, it's located around this area. So here's Machu Picchu, and people cannot get out of Peru because of transportation issues that are affecting the tourists that are there in Machu Picchu at this point in time. So that pretty much does it for me for Worldview for today. We talked about Peru. We talked about the different aspects about Peru, about the instability that's caused as a result of elections, as a result of presidential overstepping of authority. And basically what's happening is that the people of Peru are in two camps. The one camp is in Castillo's camp, and the other camp is in Boluarte's camp. And basically what's happening is those two camps are now coming to loggerheads to try to figure out about how to run the country together. And they're being pretty mean about this whole situation. And what's going to happen is that you're going to disrupt a lot of things within this country economically, which is not going to do it any good in the long run. So that is what's happening within South America. And it's very important for us to understand exactly how that's going to affect us from the U.S. perspective, both from trade, from migration, all the other things that have to go along with that. And I urge the viewers to continue watching that Peru aspect, but also watch it in respect with Brazil, because Brazil is undergoing its own political instability right now with its current president, and the president that was before him. You have President Lula, and then you have the ex-president, who is not really conceding at this point in time. So there's a lot of things that are happening in Brazil. A lot of political instability in South America at this point in time. Keep an eye on that, because that will, in fact, affect us in the United States and affect us as Americans. So thank you so much for watching, And whatever you do, make sure that no matter how you conduct yourselves in the United States, understand that it's all part of the worldview. Have a great day.